Hey guys. So welcome back to the second You Talk, I Listen session. This time was a little bit different. It was out in nature, and I'll be honest with you, I've been really overthinking myself and my abilities. Yeah, and I was just doubting whether I should even be doing this. But I got over it. I decided to upload the very first one, so by the time you're seeing this, hopefully you've seen the first one. If not, there's another one out. That one came out on Friday. I'm going to be uploading on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So yeah, but this is the second one. So we just jump right in to the 10-minute talking session. Then I tell you what I got from that. Then we do 3 minutes. I tell you what I got from that. Another 3 minutes. I tell you what I got from that. And then I think like a 2-minute conclusion. And then, yeah. So let me know what you guys take away from these sessions. If you have anything you'd like to change, if the time's too long, time's too short. I'm contemplating around putting music in, but I'm not sure right now. So if you feel like music would be helpful, let me know. Okay, bye. Okay, hello. So I'm going to read you guys the notes that I took during our first 10-minute free talking session. And you just listen and take from it what you can. Nothing can remove you from your path and place you exactly where you need to be. And sometimes the only reason comes from a greater wisdom, too magnetic to quantify. So, who is nothing and what is nothing? Nothing is our origin. And as freeing as it might sometimes seem to believe that when you are meant for something, or when you have the desire for something, nothing can get in your way, in the sense that no one can stop you, no living thing can stop you. What can cease your existence along a certain path is nothing, is before the beginning, is darkness, is death. And sometimes that can be really difficult to stomach. And it almost feels like a proverb that should be rewritten in a more empowering way. But the truth is that oftentimes we can be moved from the path we would like to be on, from the strength we would like to have, from the people we would like to be around or be with. And the only reason is that there was not a place for you there. There was not a future for you there that would be built from fertile ground. And that can be for many reasons. So when I say that nothing can remove you from your path and place you exactly where you need to be, nothing can do that. Nothing, the great goddess. Nothing, the creator. Nothing, darkness and death in their original expression, can take you away from every place that you want to be and put you everywhere that you need to be. And as I've said before, sometimes where you need to be is on the outskirts of the reality that you want or the dream that you hold. It's that thin outside layer, like that ring of light around an eclipse. And when it becomes visible to you, it can feel as devastating as eclipses have been characterized to be throughout history, throughout mystical history. It can feel as big as a tower, as monstrous as a disaster. And sometimes it is. We don't always receive the warning signs before we leave from the front door. Sometimes they only come as we travel the road. Begin to memorize the signs and signals drawing you away and towards certain places as you go along your path. If we were going to be told exactly how the day was going to unfold before we even stepped outside, you probably wouldn't go outside. Because most of the time, what dominates our everyday reality is the mundane. And sometimes the mundane comes with a greater force than it seems it should be able to. And sometimes the mundane shows up in dread, and sometimes the mundane shows up in silence or overwhelming noise. And they're all signals. Life is constantly speaking to us and telling us, this is a place where you feel good, this is a place where you feel bad, this is a place where you struggle, this is a place where you contemplate, this is a place where you're competitive, this is a place where you're at ease. And we will only get that wisdom and that knowledge when we step out into the world and begin to listen. You can't really hear the cicadas from inside. You can't learn how to drive from in your living room. You can't know who you'll like or what will hurt you until you experience it. But once you begin to have those experiences, they only need to be a one-time lesson. And if you look at life and at those moments as teaching experiences, you can begin to chart a path for yourself that is actually filled with a lot more ease. If you're willing to sit with the noise, with the dread, and begin to understand it and why it's shown up and how you got here and why you stay here, you can begin to find a way out and a way beyond it. But what I found to be true about life is that until you understand, you are not going to be able to move forward. There is no beating the exam. You have to pass the test. There's no faking it. So pick up on when you start to feel horrible in a certain situation, and when you start to hate life, and when you start to feel sick, and when you start to feel excited, and when you start to feel alive, and when you start to feel triggered and challenged. And pick up on those moments and then sit with them and study them. Sit in the energy and ask yourself questions and begin to learn the best way you know how. And I bet you'll find that there's quite a sneaky little path out of that situation. And the answers reveal themselves a lot faster than you think. Nature is much louder than our creations, just as your mother is a woman you can hardly understand. And for good reason. We must continue being a student of creative energy and understanding the idiosyncrasies and randomness of her tone, her call, and our response, and how it all plays into the revelations of your own magnitude. Nature is much louder than our creations, just as your mother is a woman whom you can hardly understand. Even living in the middle of the city, in the middle of downtown, the silence of nature, or the erasure of nature, is deafening. And despite all our efforts to move beyond the wild and out of the jungle and into some sort of civilized state, which I suppose really just means a sort of protected and independent state that does not rely on the moods of winter and summer and spring and fall and the bears and the bugs and the rain and the heat. Still, nature is endlessly a part of the conversation, just as no matter how old you grow, who your mother is, who your mother was, and what she did to you and how she raised you, and whether she was a good mother and what kind of woman she was, if she was a woman, and whether she cared and if she was there. The conversations of our origin point, our most tangible and identifiable beginning, they never leave us. They're never not a part of the discussion. And they're always required when it comes to beginning the process of healing, which I found is really just a process of feeling safe trying to understand, feeling safe trying to learn, feeling safe asking questions and being curious about your existence and what happened and how we got here, even if you don't reach a final conclusion. I was saying to myself that my favorite children to watch on short-term bases are newborns, because I love the language that they speak, the silent language, and their cries, and their coos, and their grunts. And I love that they open up a part of the world that is closed off once you begin to experience that first form of civilization, which is learning your mother tongue, as they call it. And that's interesting because the tongue of our mother is usually the tongue that we speak as newborns. We understand our mothers, and they understand us, and they listen to us, and they speak back to us in that language that isn't considered much of anything at all. But the mother tongue is your native language. And it brings us back again to this idea of origin. Did you feel safe asking your mother about herself, about her life and who she was, what she desired, what she dreamed of, how she first felt when she found out that she was having you? Being able to talk to our mothers in this way is similar to being able to talk to the universe. You know, they're like a glimpse at nothing, at nothingness. And the answers they give are hardly satisfying. But they teach us a lot through their evasiveness. They teach us a lot about acceptance and patience and sacrifice. Sacrifice in the name of being a part of the living. They're sacrifices we may not have to make once we become ancestors, but to desire to know is to desire to be alive, because to know is active. To know is to be, and being is an active action that you have to take each and every day. There's something about that last line. We must continue being a student of creative energy and understanding the idiosyncrasies and randomness of her tone, her call and her response, and our response, and how it all plays into the revelations of your own magnitude. If it was easy to understand, it'd be boring. If it were easy to do, we'd all be doing it. You know something that's not very easy for me to do, especially right now, but is considered something that is almost natural to our being, is breathing. But I was born with asthma. It's actually passed down through my family. And as I sit here with you today, I'm recovering from pneumonia during the summertime. So I'm having to learn again how to breathe. And because I've lived with asthma my whole life, I've picked up on warning signs and signals from my body telling me it's forgetting how to do something, it's struggling how to do something, this thing that's really important. And so I act quicker, and I move slower, and I get on my own timeline, because I remember that though I would love to be a part of the wave of the all-knowing and the doing naturally, I've got this thing that disrupts me from what seems to be innate. If it was easy to understand, it'd be boring. There are so many lessons in the things that are hardest for us to accomplish, in the things that challenge us most, but sometimes those challenges were given to us because we are the ones that are meant to innovate in that realm. As much as we all desire ease and peace and tranquility and slow living from time to time, look at all of the things that we create to disrupt us from a life with nature, which is slow living, which is a life guided on someone else's timeline, a greater force. We create so many disruptions to put us into a position where we can be challenged, not just physically, because nature is quite physically demanding, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And we want to be challenged in those ways because we're not just souls. When we're down here, we are human. And the human being is a competitive, creative, eccentric, strange, adventurous, compelling creature who desires to learn and desires to evolve. Not all the things that seem like disruptions and barriers along our path are burdens. even if they sit like that in our body, if they sit in our body as burdens. Things are complicated and have multiple meanings. And sometimes we create these disruptive moments or habits, tendencies, storylines in our life, in our family trees, in order to actually get back to the center of what's at nature, which is a moment to pause, breathe, reflect, understand, and listen. And through all that, receive. A greater vision, a greater takeaway, better words to be able to move you along your path or out of a certain space, out of a certain way of life, towards a new way of life, in a way that is truly transformative and impactful rather than easily accessible. Life is not usually the most accessible place. Speaking to you as somebody who has many accessibility desires. But just because something isn't accessible doesn't mean it's not meant for you, and doesn't mean you don't belong in that space to challenge it, to push it forward, to contemplate, and to help it evolve, which is what we humans are very, very good at. But then, once you read between the lines and listen as the cicadas rest their chorus, you'll find a sweeter niche of sound and song that shows you a unique way to get to the center of meaning and your time in this place. There is always a story being told. So many stories all at once. And usually the loudest voices are just the first to the table, the first to the mic, the first to gain a crowd, the first to gain attention and be able to withstand that, the fastest to procreate or to gain power or to understand the human condition and use it for its own desires. But it's not always the story you need to be listening to. And as nature does, balancing everything out, there are always going to be times when that loud voice turns down the volume and a quieter story begins to be told. And if you're willing to navigate the ins and the outs, the ebbs and the flows of hearing the story, of finding the quiet hum within the chaos, within the loud chorus, and sitting with that teaching, with every note as it comes to you, as it evades you, as it comes back to you, as it releases from you, and begin to put together the pieces of that story, you begin to find little paths, little steps, and rarely is it a linear path, rarely is it a straightforward path. It's often very hopscotchy and requires a lot of balance and juggling and a willingness to fall and a willingness to go back and a willingness to be on an island of your own and ask for help and dig up the earth and plant a rock and dig into a mountain, to carve a rock, to go create the next stone path. A willingness to do a lot of work just to understand a very quiet story. But it's because there's something so sweet there. Because there's so much richness and meaning in what's hardest to grasp. And it's what propels us forward. My sister used to say, when she was still going through the newborn phase, that babies aren't that babies aren't always blessings, but they are miracles. And sometimes I kind of feel that way about life. And once you end up here, though, it's not your job to decide whether it was a blessing or not that you're here, or whether you deserve to be here or belong here, because you're here. It's not your job to decide whether the voice you begin to hear once all the noise finally dims down and you put your phone away and you turn your music off and you close your eyes and suddenly something starts to begin to speak. It's not your job to decide whether that's supposed to be happening right now, whether that voice should be listened to, because you're hearing it. So then it's about trying to understand it, trying to learn it. It's not always what we want, but oftentimes it's what we have to do. And thinking back again to babies. My nephews right now are learning to speak English, and I'm pretty sure they hate it. But they don't have a choice. You have to participate in this life. You have to be willing to get engaged and get involved. And it's decisions we all have to make. And some of the greatest sacrifices we make of our realities and of our desires and our dreams and our wishes is when we do away with our original tongue, the tongue of the universe, the tongue of a babbling baby, our mother tongue, and begin to invest in the creations of human beings, the language of the world, of existence and aliveness and consciousness and civilization. Not necessarily to be rid of our soulful nature, our natural way, but instead to join the conversation, to expand the language, to bring in some of those indigenous tones and sounds that are missing, some stories that are not being told. But you have to be able to understand what people are saying to you, what the world is saying to you, and why, in order to challenge it, in order to improve it, even in order to divest from it. You still have to understand it. And so, I ask you, what is the quietest voice saying? And remember, sometimes the silence is deafening. Okay, so I'm going to read you guys the notes that I took during our first 3-minute session. Here is the first one. Look up and read the meaning or the definition of idiosyncrasy. So I did. And it is a mode of behavior or way of thought peculiar to an individual, a distinctive or peculiar feature or characteristic of a place or a thing. And it derives from the Greek language, and it is roughly broken down into own, private, with mixture. So, as I was reading about what an idiosyncrasy is, or what it means, I was thinking a lot about how people characterize life on Earth, life as a human being, life as a person, and how strange it is, and sometimes how unnatural it seems to the soul or to this idea of the way things should be, to the essence of life, how opposite it can sometimes feel and how strange that can be and how many questions can come from that. And I was thinking about one of the most defining qualities about being alive and being on this earth is the weight that you carry and the density within our bodies. And I was thinking about how, oftentimes religious institutions and spiritual institutions will lean heavily into this idea of lightness and purity as the sort of antithesis to sort of the antithesis to life here on Earth and how disruptive it can be and complicated and heavy and how unnatural that seems. And it speaks a lot about the soul and trying to get back to the soul and get back to this place of lightness and purity, free from diversities and complicated existences, this idea of oneness. But I loved that going to the Greek origin of idiosyncrasy, it was own, comma, private, with mixture. And that's very defining of the human existence. You have the own, which is the self, or the soul, the I. But then that with brings in this collaborative spirit that is very unique to Earth, where you incarnate and suddenly you are not just your soul, but you are a body, and you are a mind, and you are an ego, and you are love, and you are human, and you are an earth being, and you are an animal, and you are of the earth, and you are a woman, and you believe in this, and you look this way, and you feel these things, and you do this, and this is your nature, and this is your astrology, and this is your numerology, and all of these incredible systems and identity markers and aspects that come to help shape who you are as an existing person on this planet. Earth is about diversity. Inside of you, there are multiple universes because of your microbiome. And we're made up of all these incredibly fast-moving atoms. And there's all of these philosophies and stories that we tell. And so many ideas about who we are, and so many ways of being, and we're constantly evolving, all within one lifetime. I think that idiosyncrasy is a great word to pull on when trying to understand what it is like to be human and your soul. And trying to understand that in order to be human, you have to accept that it is not the soul that necessarily comes first, nor the body, but all that work in one complicated amalgamation, collaborative, cooperative existence of many things, but one thing. One moving direction, moved by many spirits, many energies, many ideas, many ways of being. It's very strange. Pause and bring relief. Time is there for you to take it. It's there for you to pop the bubble of go, 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 live, 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 exist, 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 do, do, do. And if you use time, you can actually help balance out the force of the density of your nature. It helps ease the weight. Have we considered that time, in the way that we use it, is not a creation of the earth, but actually a gift or a coping mechanism brought down here to this planet from the soul realm, from the spiritual realm? When you look at all of those ancient clocks and calendars that, our great ancestors built long ago, it had so much to do with time. It had so much to do with measuring and tracking and numbers and trying to make sense. Such logical information, but these days we characterize as very illogical, and so we call it very human because we think the human existence is quite illogical. Perhaps becoming more in tune with the soul existence, and so we go from one extreme to the next. But I think that time is a favor to us, and it is used to help us take brief holidays and escapes from the constantness of life and that constant labor. It's a reason why during there's a reason why jaguars don't just come running up on their prey and immediately bounce or pounce. And there's a reason why during birth you don't just push just to get the baby out. You have to take breaks. You have to pause. There's a reason why it's beneficial to stop and think before you speak. It's actually meant to bring you relief to support you and aid you and help you manage the constant toll or push to keep going. You don't always have to go flying. The wind doesn't have to move you at its own pace. There's value in your density, in your thick weight and immovable pride. Isn't it so interesting that all of these conversations we've been having about balancing out density and the weight of existence and the weight of the physical body and how it can feel like such a burden in this life when you look purely from this idea of this pure soul aspect and this being the most pure form of existence and the most preferred form of existence, the most sacred. It's funny how all of those conversations can be turned around in favor of the physical, in favor of the body and density. Sometimes it can feel like we were created to move, created to constantly be at work and in labor. But the earth gave us the gift of weight so that we could actually stand our ground, hold our ground. Weight allows us to access stillness. And stillness is often characterized as the most sacred expression of the divine. It is within stillness that you find the answers you seek. It is within stillness that you can begin to really hear and feel what's missing, what's been lost. Because we have weight, we are able to be still. And I think that that's a very beautiful thing. It's another gift of being human. A strange idiosyncrasy. And still, stronger than the will of the body may be the soul. Well, we came down here for a reason, didn't we? Maybe, maybe not. But there does seem to be a mission to every life from what I've seen. Something driving it forward. And if it's not the human, if it's not the body, because I'm not sure that survival is enough of a mission, it's the soul. And even when our bodies want to stop and our human nature tells us no, there is something that pushes us beyond that fear, beyond the pain point, beyond the threshold and the comfort zone, the safety and the security. It's the magical knowing of our soul that there is something just beyond that point that we just have to get to, that we just have to see. And it's something we can't feel with our hands yet, and we may not be able to see with our eyes yet, but we can sense it with something that comes from a greater realm. And that's the gift of the strength of the soul. It pushes us beyond just the reason of survival and asks us if life is worth living if you're just living to live. The soul desires challenge just as much as the human does. And perhaps the human desires challenge because the human is also a soul. Hi guys, so I'm going to share with you the notes from our final 3-minute session. The first one is, the age of finality of the final 3, maiden, mother, crone, mind, body, soul, now enters the goddess, the heart. From 3 to 4. There is a sequence to things, an order, and as humans, we have been lucky enough to get older, live longer, grow beyond certain ideas of what life could be, and expand into more and into greater. And when I heard the age of the final 3, it also came with this idea of the age of finality, which dominated at first. And then I heard, or I thought of the maiden, the mother, and the crone, though I always used to say, or though I was saying in my head, the mother, the maiden, and the crone. And that's because for a very long time, not just the existence of women, but really the existence of human beings and life on this earth has been defined firstly through our ability to produce, our labor, our regenerative and reproductive fertility powers that allow us to extend our lineage and survive beyond the wild and beyond the whims of predator versus prey and disease and all the many things of existence that can take you out the game. And so it used to only be for many of us humans that life was just defined by these stages of existing. Firstly, existing as a producer, as a laborer, then as a child, as something or someone innocent in need of learning as a student, and then as an elder, as one with the gift of time, and along with that, wisdom and knowledge and closeness to the afterlife and a certain Piscean wisdom that comes with that as well. But what is becoming available to us is the goddess, which is a beautiful and wonderful energy that has been rid from this planet for a very long time because of the institutions that have taken hold and the systems of power that have dominated. The goddess has entered into the quiet, into the wild, and become that quiet voice that you can only hear when you're willing to pause and breathe and be disrupted from your bubble. As the goddess comes to take over and extend our vision, extend our life, so does the heart. And with that, there is a certain aspect of immunity and immortality that comes with this. There is this concept that energy cannot die, which I like to challenge. But for the sake of this conversation and thinking about creative energy and the creative force, the creative will, and not being connected to the womb, and not being connected to women, and this desire, this force to create and procreate and extend and expand into some great unknown future, risk averse, apocalypse averse, revolution averse. The goddess is becoming a stronger aspect of that conversation, as we are being told all at once that it is the end for us, it is the end for humanity, that we have lost our humanity, that we are without our soul, that this is the final age, that judgment soon come. At the same time, the goddess is being revealed, and with her, she is bringing a certain level of immortality. That comes from an awareness that when you can feel, then you can touch, the center of the universe. When you can feel you are in conversation with nothingness. You are in conversation with the unknown. And from there are endless possibilities. Who gave you your heart? Your specific rhythm? Who taught you how to feel, to hear? Where do your senses come from? Let's just sit with those questions because I don't particularly have an answer. One of the other notes was, these boots are made for walking. And in parentheses I wrote, your heart was made to be used. There's been a lot of head over heart conversations for the past few centuries when it comes to humanity. Logic. This idea that God is dead and the mind is what will prevail and carry us forward and help us to survive. And the mind is a very powerful place. But I think a lot of us are finding that you cannot ignore what is on your heart at this time. And the more you push away the song of your heart, the words that it speaks and the stories that it tells you, the harder it is to feel alive at all, feel connected to life at all, and find meaning or resonance with anything. Our hearts are very full, and I don't think they've been used to their proper advantage for the past few millennia, perhaps, on this planet. You know, the heart isn't just this processing machine pumping our blood and keeping us alive or giving us feelings and emotions that make us overwhelmed. The heart is something mysterious and great, and a portal residing within our bodies that allows us to kind of dive into the swampy existence of the center of creation, which must come from a feeling, no? How do you know when you want to create something? How do you know when you want to move or be with someone or be somewhere or not be somewhere? You just know. But how do you know? Well, it's because you just feel something. You just feel it. In your bones, in your body, in your heart, in your stomach. I think those feelings, they all come from the heart. But where the heart comes from, I'm not sure. Sometimes the story can only be told in the aftermath. The rubble of a mountain eventually becoming fertile soil. I think all of this to say, some answers won't come in the moment or in this lifetime, but in generations to come. And thinking about the age of finality, it might also come alongside this understanding of the age of acceptance the age of acceptance of the unknown, and finally relinquishing to the reality that we're not going to be able to figure this whole thing out, at least not all on our own. And that in order to grasp some type of knowing or understanding about our origin and who we are and why we are the way we are going to need to relinquish the power that comes with being able to explain and understand and simply accept guidance. Accept the position of following and learning and receiving and releasing and realizing, all without putting into a properly intellectual framework. Perhaps it is not the time to build systems, but to regain consciousness and awareness of the body, which we are still fighting to understand. And allow that mysterious force to speak, as quiet as it is. Pause, breathe, and listen. I think that's all you can do. So I'm just going to read you the concluding thoughts, but I don't know if I'll explain it so much. There are escapes, gaps, holes in the barriers sometimes being your vision, leading you to breakthrough. Sometimes where the fence is where the gate is. Sometimes the exit is west, through the heart, the unearthing.